Today is Saturday, November the 3rd. My name is Clint Risner. I am the videographer and interviewer, and the place of the interview is at the 5-star premier residence. And the person I'm going to interview is Sam Fagin. Sam, at first, I would like for you to tell me about your family, your parents, grandparents, when and where were you born, and how did you happen to settle in Dallas, and what did your parents do for a living?
I was born in Oklahoma City in 1918. My father and mother were both from Russia. I had 3 brothers and 1 sister. I don't remember too much about my grandparents. I remember my mother's mother lived in New York, and she couldn't speak English, and I was quite young. She came to Oklahoma City to visit one year. And I don't remember too much about her. I was just very, very young, maybe 6 or 7 years old. I did not know either one of my grandfathers. I didn't know much about them. My father had a clothing store downtown in Oklahoma City, and my mother was strictly a housewife who raised 5 children, and she kept a very strict kosher home.
How did you happen to settle in Dallas, Sam?
My father passed away when I was quite young. I think I was 12 years old. My mother had a sister who lived in Dallas, and they owned the New York Bakery on Forest Avenue in South Dallas. We moved to Dallas in 1933. I started my first year high school in Dallas, and I've been here ever since.
Okay. As a childhood, you said you lived in Oklahoma City first, then you moved to Dallas, right?
Right.
What was your neighborhood like in Dallas?
It wasn't like Dallas. We were in a neighborhood of mostly Gentiles. The Jewish people, they were kind of scattered around Oklahoma City. We had lots of Gentile neighbors, very friendly.
Mm-hmm. Now this was in Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City.
Okay.
I went to elementary school in Oklahoma City, and I went to junior high school in Oklahoma City. The following year, I was supposed to graduate from junior high, but that's the year we moved to Dallas. And when I moved to Dallas, I started the first year of high school at Forest Avenue.
Now the neighborhood in Dallas was different from the neighborhood in Oklahoma City.
Entirely. South Dallas was practically, I would say, 95% Jewish people.
On Forest Avenue, that area?
Forest Avenue, Park Road, South Boulevard.
Okay.
We went to school, and when the Jewish holidays, I think, would come up, they practically, I think they didn't have classes, because going to high school there, we were about 97% pupils. So there wasn't any need to have any school for the Jewish holidays.
So at your high school, at Forest Avenue High School, it was at one time almost 97% Jewish.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
Okay. It was.
Okay.
Beautiful high school with a wonderful auditorium right on Forest Avenue.
Okay, what did you do after high school, Sam?
After high school, I didn't have the opportunity to go to college. And that was the centennial year, the Texas Centennial, 1936. Other than carrying, in younger years, paper routes and things like that, I had to go find a job. So I would get on the streetcar for 7 cents and go downtown. And I remember, Clint, so very well, getting off the streetcar over there at Main Street and it wasn't Akron. It was by the Teichgettinger department store. And I went in looking for a job, and they were not taking applications. Times were very bad. And this was in the middle of a hot summer. I remember so distinctly. It was August the 21st, 1936, and the temperature was about 110 degrees. Well, anyway, I went from store to store. I went from Teichgettinger all the way down to W.A. Green. From there, I went to A. Harrison Company. I went down the street to James K. Wilson. I ended up at Lamar and Main and Elm, Sanger Brothers. And I went into Sanger Brothers, and it was the same story everywhere. They were not taking applications. Work was very, very hard to find. Across the street, going back up where I came from, it was E.M. Khan. I couldn't find a job there. Anyway, I decided to go on back, catch a streetcar, go on back to South Dallas. And I passed Reynolds Penland, and I got to the corner of Main and Irving Street to catch the streetcar to go home. And there was a department store there called Neiman Marcus, which I had never heard of before. And the door was open, and there was a beautiful aroma coming out. And I could smell that. It was like powder or perfume. So I went in the store. This was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the cosmetic department happened to be in the front of the store, not in the back where it is now. So I asked someone, a young lady there, where was the employment office? And they said, towards the back there. So I go back up there to put my application in, and the first thing I see is a sign that says, no applications accepted after 2:30. But anyway, they did take my application, and Neiman's was a very small specialty store, 4 floors. And they hired me because, as a messenger boy, I was like a Philip Morris, dressed in a uniform like Philip Morris cigarettes, call boys they used to be called in those days. They hired me because 3 of the boys, messenger boys, were going off to college in early September. And Mr. Ilo, I remember so well, our superintendent, he hired me as a messenger boy, and he said, your salary will be $50 a month. And that was it. I came back to work the following Monday, and the rest is more or less history. I did work 3 months as a messenger boy, which it was just, you did everything. You took bank checks upstairs to be okayed. You took packages down to the delivery department. Just a general flunky. Anyway, after 3 months, I asked for a raise, and they gave me a $3 a month raise. I I worked another couple of months and asked for another raise, and they raised me to $55 a month, and they gave me a $2 a month raise. Well, eventually I got different promotions from a messenger boy to a cashier. From a cashier, they put me as a stock boy in the basement in the ladies' shoe department. And I was working down there as a stock boy for about, could be maybe 3 years. So one Saturday afternoon, after lunch, I went upstairs on the floor, and I did see Mr. Herbert Marcus Sr. That was Mr. Stanley's father. In those days, we worked 6 days a week. There wasn't no 5-day week in those years. I walked up there to Mr. Marcus. He knew me very well. He always called me Fagin, and Stanley called me Sammy. Anyway, I walked up there to Mr. Marcus. He was in the shoe department just checking things out. And I said, Mr. Marcus, I want to thank you for 4 or 5 years of work here at Neiman Marcus. And he said, Fagin, what do you mean you want to thank me? I says, well, I'm going pretty steady with a young lady, and I need to advance myself, and I'm going to, this was Saturday afternoon, and I said, I'm going to work Monday morning for a jewelry store. He says, Fagin, what are you doing? I said, I'm a stock boy in the shoe department downstairs. He says, how much are you making? I said, $75 a month. He said, you go back to your work and don't leave the store till you hear from me. And that's coming from the president, Mr. Herbert Marcus Sr. So I go back to work. In about an hour and a half, our shoe buyer called me upstairs and said, Sam, Mr. Marcus does not want you to leave the store. He wants you to come back to work Monday, and he wants you to start selling shoes immediately, and he wants you to have a drawing account of $150 a month. That was doubling my salary. He says, you go home and talk to your fiance and your mother, and he would love to have you come back to work. I didn't know what to do. I was supposed to go to work for this jewelry store Monday. So I went home and talked to my future wife and mother, and she said, I don't know what to tell you, but you've been there 4 or 5 years. Maybe you ought to stay and see what happens. I came back to work on the following Monday. Had a hard time explaining the jewelry store what happened, and the rest, more or less, is history.
That's remarkable, Sam. That's very remarkable.
Yeah.
That was doubling your salary and incredible.
I had never sold a shoe before. I never even tried on a shoe on any lady's foot. I practiced on my fiance and my mother. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I didn't know too much about the shoe business. So I would study.
You want to see who that is? I can turn it off. You want to? Sam, so over the years you progressed, you got promotions.
Well, I stayed in the shoe department, but I didn't know too much about shoes. So I would study the Vogue magazine and the Harper's Bazaar and the Footwear News and get ideas. So I started selling shoes, and to build up a clientele, each customer that I had sold a pair of shoes to, my homework was to sit down and write them a thank you note for coming in the store and for me waiting on them and selling them a pair of shoes. And I built up a clientele because every customer I sold a shoe to, they heard from me, not only one time, but I would send them notices out when we had a sale twice a year. So they heard from me when we had a sale twice a year. And then I would send them out letters when we had the new spring merchandise coming in and also the new fall merchandise coming in. So they heard from me 5 times out of a year. So the next time they needed a pair of shoes, they would say, well, I know Mr. Fagin at Neiman Marcus. And that went on for several years, and I built up a wonderful clientele. And by word of mouth, it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And we had quite a few salespeople in those days. At one time, I'm telling you, we had as many as 16 to 18 salespeople selling women's shoes. Neiman Marcus was very well known for their ladies' shoe department. I developed a very fine clientele, and when the telephone would ring back in the back, and if I was there, I would answer it. And I would pick up customers on the phone who I never knew, never waited on before, were eventually fantastic customers. I waited on so many celebrities. I waited on LBJ's wife, Lady Bird Johnson. She was a customer of mine for about 10 years. I waited on Sophie Tucker. I waited on John Wayne. I waited on Ginger Rogers many times. Always in the fitting room with her mother. She never came to the shoe department. It was always in the fitting room in the women's, in the couture department. And Mr. Herbert Marcus' sister, Carrie Neiman, she was always in the women's, she took care of the women. She watched the women's shop. And I would bring up shoes to the fitting room. And the customers usually liked the selection. But Carrie Neiman would say, Mr. Fagin, that's not the right shoe for that particular outfit that Miss So-and-so was purchasing. You go down and find something else. And that's how they built their business. It was just phenomenal. I had the best customers. I picked up a phone call one time, and who was it? Miss Dan Gerber, Gerber's Baby Food. I'd never met her, but I talked to her many times on the phone. Just picking up that phone call the one time, I developed a very fine customer. She called me one time in later years, and she said, Mr. Fagin, I'll be in Dallas next week, and I'll be at the Fairmont Hotel, and I want you to send me some shoes, handbags, scarves, etc. Well, I got a collection of merchandise and sent it to the hotel to hold for her when she arrived, and it was merchandise in the vicinity of $4,000 or $5,000. When I was talking to her, I says, by the way, Mrs. Gerber, are you flying in DFW or are you going to be coming in through Love Field? She says, oh no. She said, Mr. Fagin, my chauffeur will be driving me to Dallas. I said, oh, wonderful. Well, after I sent her the merchandise, several days later, Mr. Stanley called me. He says, Sammy, he says, Miss Gerber really loved your selection. She didn't keep everything, but she kept quite quite a bit of the merchandise that you sent her. And that's how I developed my clientele. It just kept growing and growing and growing. And I had all these socialites in Dallas. I waited on Margot Perot. I waited on Annette Strauss, our mayor. She's a customer of mine before she became mayor for years. I had a fabulous clientele. It kept getting bigger and bigger. I had 3 volumes of customers' names.
That's incredible, Sam. You certainly offered quality service, and it paid off for you, didn't it?
Well, number one, service was really what Neiman Marcus, that was the main thing. I tell you, I remember when Neiman Marcus had their Diamond Jubilee. There was 75 years. They opened up in 1907. This was in 1982. They came to me and he says, Sam, you're going to be on the Bema with all the big wheels because you're the senior salesman here in the store, and Miss So-and-so will be up there with you as the senior buyer, and your wife is invited also. We had cocktails down in the Fairmont Hotel. It was a black tie affair. It was 1982, 75, yeah, 1982. We got to the hotel after parked the car, went down to where they were having a cocktail before dinner, and I see Mr. Stanley talking to Lady Bird Johnson. And I told my wife, I said, Frida, I'm going to introduce you to Lady Bird Johnson. So we got up there right by her, and Stanley saw me. He said, Sammy and Frida, how are you? Fine. I said, Miss Johnson, I want you to meet my wife, Frida Fagin. She says, Miss Fagin, your husband has been taking care of me for so many years. He's just been taking such good care, and I like everything about his selection of shoes. I said, thank you. And me, out of a clear sky, I say, Miss Johnson, are you still wearing size 7 AAA shoes? She says, oh no, Mr. Fagin, my feet are I'm getting older, my feet are getting wider, I'm wearing 7 AA shoes. I said, well, Miss Johnson, that's even better because we always have a better selection of AA shoes than we have of AAA and quad shoes. And a few days, Stanley called me. He said, Sam, Miss Johnson was thrilled that you remembered her shoe size. I said, well, you taught me all that, Mr. Stanley. If I couldn't remember a customer's name, and I knew them so well, if I couldn't get their name, while I'm waiting on them, I would take off their shoe. And as soon as I saw their shoe size, bingo, their name came to me. Just like that.
That's great.
I would call them by the name. I call most of them Honey and this and that and the other because I knew them so well. But I remember customer shoe sizes so very well.
Well, Sam, what a remarkable working career you have had. It's incredible. Let's go to, what were your Jewish affiliations during your childhood? Or did your family belong to a synagogue?
Oh yeah, in Oklahoma City now, we belong to the Orthodox. My folks were very Orthodox. My mother was strictly Orthodox, kept a very kosher home, and whenever we would get a new young rabbi, if he wasn't married, he would have a room with the Fagins, because my mother kept kosher. And it was my job as a little boy to walk with the rabbi to the synagogue downtown. I couldn't even turn the light on in his room. I had to go next door and get the Gentile girl to turn the switch on for the rabbi. Anyway, I went to Hebrew school in Dallas. After regular school, elementary school, every day I would catch the streetcar and go down. We called it Cheder. That was the religious school, learning for your bar mitzvah. I went down there for many years. I had 3 brothers. They all had their bar mitzvah. And I was supposed to have the big one because I was the baby of the family. Well, my father passed away a month before my bar mitzvah, and it was a small bar mitzvah. So I had to learn my speech that I gave. I had to learn a new one. And also, being an Orthodox, we weren't supposed to ride to town. We were supposed to walk to the synagogue. Well, my father had a sister who lived about 2 or 3 blocks from the synagogue downtown, and we would go and stay with her the night before, and then we'd go to the services the following day. Well, after we moved to Dallas, I did belong to myself. While I was still, I wasn't married, I was still young. I belonged to a synagogue in South Dallas.
And what was the name of that synagogue?
I was working at Neiman's, but I wasn't married yet.
Okay.
But when I got married, we did join the Jewish synagogue. We stayed with the Jewish synagogue, but my wife was raised up in Camp, Texas, close to Cedar Creek Lake, which was not a lake at that time because that was a man-made in later years. But the men sat on one side and the women sat on the other, and the rabbi talked a lot in Jewish, and my wife couldn't understand it. So we got away from that.
What was the name of that synagogue?
It was called, I'm trying to think. It wasn't Tifereth Israel, that's another one. It was called Agudah Sachem.
Okay.
Agudah Sachem. And anyway, after we were married, well, let me go back. We got married a month before Pearl Harbor, November the 9th of 1941. And in 6 months, I was drafted. My birthday was in April, and she gave me a going away birthday and also a going away party to join the Army. I was drafted, I had to go. We all did. I was put in the Air Force. And I was gone 2.5 years. I didn't see her for 2.5 years. Matter of fact, the first anniversary, I was out in the South Pacific. After I got back from the service, we had our first child, our first son, our only child, Milton. He was born in November the 2nd of 1948.
Where did you meet your wife? Here in Dallas?
I met my wife here in Dallas through her brother. I belonged to a Jewish young fraternity called, it was the Junior B'nai B'rith. And under 21, we were all members of that. Even my wife's brother, who I did not know his sister at the time. When we became 21, our Jewish B'nai B'rith fraternity, they formed another fraternity called Aoda. Aoda. Alumni of Dallas, AZA. It was the B'nai B'rith. I was in the AZA. That was a junior chapter of the B'nai B'rith. That's right. AZA. Anyway, I met my wife through her brother. She said, you always meeting Sam at the corner drugstore. We always met at the corner drugstore in those days. She said, why don't you invite him over to the house and go with him to your meetings on Sunday? So we did that one time. He invited me over to the house, and I just said hello to her, and that was it. Met her, and that was all there was to it. Well, anyway, I was on vacation. I guess it might have been the year, I was on a week's vacation from Neiman's. Could have been the year 1940. And my mother had sent me to the grocery store to get a few groceries. And while I'm shopping, I see Frida Barshop. She was in there shopping also. And we spoke. And I said, by the way, there's a certain bean that my mother wants I can't find. She asked me what it was, and I told her, and she said, here it is. So I carried her package of groceries home. She lived just about a block from where my mother lived. And I was on vacation. So after I took her up to her house and put her package on the front porch, I said, would you like to go play miniature golf this afternoon? A beautiful miniature golf course across from the Fair Park Music Hall, where the music hall is right now. She says, yes. I said, well, I'll be by around 2:30 and we'll go. We didn't have automobiles then. We didn't have a car. We walked from her house, it's about 8 blocks to Fair Park. We played a game of golf. And on the way back, we was talking, and I said, would you like to play golf again tonight? And she said, yes. And that's how we started our romance. We played 2 games of miniature golf, and we started going together. I would take her to Jewish dances, and we got engaged, I think in September of 41.
And what was her name?
Her name was Frida, Freda. Frida Fagin.
And where did you lived here in Dallas? Okay.
We lived on Forest Avenue.
Okay.
I
And
lived on Forest Avenue. When I came back from the service in 45, at that time she was staying with her, while I was away, she stayed with her folks.
now you were married before you went into the service.
Oh, yes.
What year did you get married?
1941, November, 1 month before the war broke out.
Okay.
And then when the war broke out, I was a 3A, but then as the war got so bad, early war, I was put in classification of 1A, which meant I was drafted right away. We all had to go.
Now, you and your wife belonged to a synagogue, right?
She was raised in a small town in Camp, Texas. And she didn't, they belonged to, they didn't have a synagogue there. They were the only Jewish family there. But anyway, I'm trying to think here. After the war, it was really hard to find apartments and houses. Terrible. Couldn't find a place to live. So we stayed with her folks for a short time till I saw an ad in the paper for a apartment. Anyway, my son was born in 48. And he went to a kind of a private fine arts school for about, well, when he started going there, about when he was 3 years old. It was a small school before he went to kindergarten.
How many children did you have?
I just had the one.
One son, okay.
My wife's sister, she had Her younger sister had 7. She had all the children. Her younger sister had 5 girls and 2 boys. I have lots of nieces and nephews. And her other sister, her older sister, had 2 daughters. And her brother, there's a picture there of her brother, handsome young man. He was killed during the war in Germany, her older brother. We joined Temple Emmanuel in South Dallas at that time, before the big temple was built here on Northwest Highway in Hillcrest. We joined that in 1950, about 19, let's see, he was born in 48, about 1956. He was about 7 or 8 years old. And we've been members of Temple Emmanuel for way over, about 55 years. My son was confirmed, he was bar mitzvah at Temple Emmanuel, and he was also confirmed there.
Do you have grandchildren, Sam?
No, my son was married just a short time, and I don't have any grandchildren. I regret that. I always fuss at my son for not giving me any grandchildren. I have lots of nieces and nephews. I have a goddaughter. I had 3 brothers who all had children. The sister lived in Pennsylvania. She had 4. And I'm the baby of the family. Didn't have anybody, just the one boy.
Sam, you have seen a lot of changes in Dallas. We have talked about a few of those changes, that you lived in the Forest Avenue area. And you have, what significant changes have you seen in Dallas? How has the city really changed a lot in terms of what it was when you were living on Forest Avenue as compared to today?
I've seen Dallas grow so much. I remember we had streetcars here, and then we had buses. Now we have DART. It was just a small big city of around maybe 200,000 or 300,000 people when I moved here in 1933.
Okay, in 33, the Dallas Jewish community, would you say it was more cohesive than it is today, or not?
Well, I think we were a little bit closer in those days than we are now. Okay. We have more synagogues now, more temples, but it's different generations. Mm-hmm. The old generation, it was so different during my time. I consider myself being a second generation. I always considered my folks as the first generation, and I would be a second generation. My son would be a third generation, and his grandchildren on and on would be a fourth or fifth. It seems like nowadays they're all catering, the temples, the synagogues are catering to and looking forward to the fourth or fifth generation of youngsters. It's just changed a lot. Like the churches of Dallas have all changed also.
So there were a lot of Jewish businesses on Forest Avenue then, during those years, right?
Well, yes, we had cleaners, we had drugstores, we had bakeries, we had lots of bakeries. South Dallas was really a wonderful place to live, a great place. And since it went black in 1956 when the school changed to Madison. Okay. And they also changed the name of the Forest Avenue street to Martin Luther King Boulevard. Beautiful homes. I think just recently they had a bus tour from the retirement center here. I didn't go because I'm a volunteer, I'll tell you in a minute. Mm-hmm. And they went all over Dallas, and they were talking about South Dallas, Forest Avenue, Park Road, and South Boulevard, which is all black, and how very well kept the homes are on those streets. Beautiful. Lawns are manicured. They're beautiful homes on South Boulevard, Park Row, and Forest Avenue. And the black people who are living there now taking great care of those homes.
So you have fond memories of those days then.
Oh yes, lots of fond memories. We had across the street from the high school, we had a root beer stand, XXX root beer stand. We had the pig stands up there on Colonial with the Nickelodeons. It was just a different era. I'm quite old now, so things have just really changed, but I'm sure it's all for the good. They don't want to hear about the good old days, the young people. We did a lot of walking in our day. We didn't have cars. We couldn't afford automobiles.
And you had better public transportation, I'm sure.
We had good transportation. Dallas Transit was very well. Used to ride the streetcar for 7 cents. You could buy 5 tokens for 30 cents, which would be 6 cents. It was very good.
Sam, who are your role models in life? Who would you consider as a role model or role models?
Well, I would consider Mr. Stanley Marcus to be a good role model for me. He took a great interest in my being, and also his father, who would not let me leave the store. I don't know what I would have done or what would have happened to me if I had gone to work for the jewelry store. I don't know. I might have been transferred to another city. Like my brother-in-law, he worked for Zale Jewelry, and then he was transferred to Omaha, Nebraska as manager of the Zales there. So I don't know what it would have been. And I've been a Masonic Mason for over 50 years. I'm a life member. And I had told my wife that when I retired from Neiman Marcus, I wanted to do some volunteer work for the Scottish Rite Hospital, Children's Hospital here in Dallas. She said, I think you should. Well, I retired from Neiman's in 1990. In 1991, I think I had surgery. In 1992, I started volunteering at the Scottish Rite Hospital. I called them and told them I called the volunteer office and told them I wanted to be a volunteer, and they says, wonderful, Mr. Fagin, we'd love to have you. We'll send you an application, and you fill it out, and we'll need 3 references. They're very particular, the Scottish Rite Hospital, on their volunteers, who they want. Well, I received the application on a Friday morning. I filled it out. And it come to the bottom of the application, they wanted to know 3 references, who I would give as references. My number 1 reference was Stanley Marcus. My second reference, I'd known the family, and I waited on her for years, happened to be the mayor of Dallas, Annette Strauss. My third reference, she worked with me at Neiman's, and she was in the public relations, was Nancy Brinker. I put that application in the mail Friday afternoon around 4 o'clock. And Monday morning around 11 o'clock, the phone rang, and they said, Mr. Fagin, come on down. We want you as a volunteer.
Right.
So during orientation, they said, we're going to put the retail man in the gift shop. And I've been in the gift shop. I received my 20-year pin last April.
Wonderful.
And I've been in the gift shop helping out for the last 20 years, once a week. And it's just a great hospital. They all know me. And you don't call the president of the hospital Mr. You call him by his initial. You call him JC. You call him Bob. It's just a family hospital, and it couldn't be a nicer place to be a volunteer. I love it. I'm still volunteering there. I still go there every Tuesday. I'm there usually from about 9 o'clock to about 2 o'clock every Tuesday.
Sam, what are you most proud of in life?
Well, I guess what I'm really proud of I've done mostly everything on my own. I'm very emotional when I break up a lot.
That's okay, Sam.
I did not have a college education. When I came back from the service, I did go to SMU for 1 semester. I didn't get a chance to finish because my mother was in a very serious automobile accident and I had to get back to work. But I'm proud that whatever I did it on my own. And I remember so well when Neiman Marcus first sold the store to Carter Hawley Hale from California. Great people. They had the Broadway stores in the West, and they owned a lot of bookstores. And I met them all. And every time we have a different store opening, of course I was there. And they kept telling me, Sam, you ought to write a book. We'll publish it for you. I said, well, one of these days. My wife says, I keep telling them to write a book, but you can't get around to it. Richard Marcus came to the house, like I said one time, and told my wife that they wanted her to go along with me when we started opening stores, with all expenses paid. And we opened up a lot of stores. We had 3 in Chicago, San Francisco. I remember so distinctly. She was the mayor of San Francisco when we opened up the store there. And I remember when she cut the ribbon, when the store opened up on a Monday morning. And I talked to her like I'm talking to you right now. And that was Dianne Feinstein. You know, she's the big senator there.
Absolutely,
now. And we always had big galas at these store openings around the country, in Palo Alto and in Florida, everywhere. And all the big wheels that owned the store, they knew Sam Fagin. They say, well, you're a legend. I said, I'm not no legend. Yeah, you're a legend. I took my wife to the hospital when we first moved here for something about her eye. And who do I see in there? Some vendor that used to sell us shoes. He said, Sam, you're a legend. I said, don't tell me that. I'm no legend. I said, I'm just a young old man. But I'm proud of the fact that I did work with Neiman's. They were very good to me. I worked for them for 54 years plus. Every time I spoke about retirement, they said, no, you can't retire. I wanted to retire when I was 65 and they wouldn't let me. So I worked till I was 72. So I hit 72, I retired. Because my wife and I, we like to travel. We went on lots of cruises in different places and we enjoyed it. I was married to my sweet wife for 67 years. I lost her several years ago.
Sam, that's okay. That's okay. Sam, the concluding question of this interview, we have covered a lot of material. I would say, indeed, you are a legend. And I am very honored to have had the opportunity to talk with you this morning. Is there anything you would like to add before closing?
people have just been good to me. Every city that we went to open up an Neiman Marcus store, they would have some reporter there interviewing me. Like I would have been some sort of a celebrity. And they'd have a write-up in the paper of Sam Fagin, the years he's been with Neiman Marcus. I don't know much else to say. Things have changed so much. I go down to the store just very occasional, and nothing's the same like it used to be. And I don't expect it to be the same. I don't know hardly anybody down there. I remember when Phil Miller was our president of Neiman's, and that was, what was our mayor's name here, Miller, what was her first name? She was the mayor of Dallas for 2 years. Anyway, we had a cocktail party, a 25-year party, once a year. So we had a cocktails on the second floor at Neiman's 1 year, and Bob Ackerman, who was manager of North Park store, he said, Sam, he says, I know you're going to retire one of these days soon, and you live over here not too far from the store on North Park, you live on Deloach. We would love to have you work part-time whenever you retire. So I said, Bob, I appreciate the offer, but if and when I retire, there's only one place I would work, and that would be downtown Neiman Marcus. And when I said that, Phil Miller grabbed me and hugged me, and he says to Bob Ackerman, the manager of the North Park store, he says, Bob, don't you know that Sam's car only knows one way to go, and that's to get on the expressway and go downtown. I'll never forget that.
That's classic.
So I'm proud. I'm proud of that. And I've got a clipping here. I wanted to show you. This was written just before I retired, April the 4th, 1988, and it's here. They called me Neiman's Golden Salesman. If you can see that?
Let me get in closer. Okay.
A picture of me. The big write-up.
I see it now. Yeah. Let me focus it this time.
Or I can hand it to you.
No, I got it now. Hold it a little higher. There.
And it's got a picture of me. You see that too?
Let's bring it in. Where are you? Down here?
Right here.
Okay, all right. Move over a little closer and let me get it. I want to get this. This is very important. Okay, I see it. Now, I've got it. All right, now what is this? Neiman's Golden Salesman. And what year was this, Sam?
They wrote that was written in 1988.
Okay, great. I got it.
And then when we moved here, Clint, they came out with a new magazine called Living Well. And the cover of it is a picture here, if you'll see, picture here of me and my wife sitting there on the sofa. Can you see us right there?
Yes, I've got it.
And there's a write-up in there. show you that. I lose my balance sometimes. That's why I use my cane. This was a picture of my wife and I that was in our calendar here in 1952.
Okay,
They wanted a picture.
got it.
They wanted a picture of before and after we moved here. See here?
Okay,
That's when my son was 4 years old.
your son was 4 years old.
You see, in 52, he was born in 48.
I got it.
And then the other pictures where we are now.
I got an individual shot of each of you. That's good. Your son and then you.
And then this was written up here when I received my little Oscar here at, you can read that.
This is Lifetime Achievement Award, Mr. Sam Fagin. And Mr. Fagin has received numerous awards from Neiman Marcus where he provided 54 years of devoted service. Many prominent Dallas socialites, including Lady Bird Johnson, have recognized him, and the Duchess of Windsor was a client of his. He was once told by his store director that you're what we're famous for, referring to Neiman Marcus. He was told by a client that in the finest traditions of Neiman Marcus, Mr. Fagin, you have been minding the store with the greatest dedication and devotion.
That's nice.
I congratulate you, Sam.
You remember when Neiman's were 100 years old in the paper here?
No.
Well, and this was they had a write-up in this In magazine, the Park Cities. And they had, there's no write-up about me. It's about Neiman Marcus, 100 years. But for some, there's Stanley. And then look at here. You got a picture of me. They didn't have a write-up, but they got a picture of me in there. Someone sent that to me. That was when they...
Okay, I have it.
Get it?
Okay, one final statement, Mr. Fagin.
Okay. Oh.
I want to thank you tremendously for sharing this opportunity with the Dallas Jewish Historical Society, this legendary, magnificent interview regarding your history with Neiman Marcus and your life. Would you like to make a final statement, Sam?
Well, I appreciate the fact that you came to see me and interviewed me. I went to work with Neiman's when I was 18 years old. And I'm now 94. So I'm hoping God will be good to me and give me at least 6 more years. Other than that, I think say right now.
Well, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity, and you have truly been blessed, and I'm again very honored to be with you this morning, Sam. Thank you very much.
I have a wonderful son, Milton, and I know he will carry the name Fagin.